Pablo Emilio Escobar Gaviria December 1, 1949 December 2, 1993, was a Colombian drug lord, narcoterrorist, and politician, who was the founder and sole leader of the Medellín Cartel. Dubbed the King of Cocaine, Escobar was one of the wealthiest criminals in history, having amassed an estimated net worth of $30 billion by the time of his death, equivalent to $70 billion as of 2022, while his drug cartel monopolized the cocaine trade into the United States in the 1980s and early 1990s. Born in Rionegro and raised in Medellín, Escobar studied briefly at Universidad Autónoma Latinoamericana of Medellín, but left without graduating. He instead began engaging in criminal activity, selling illegal cigarettes and fake lottery tickets, as well as participating in motor vehicle theft. In the early 1970s, he began to work for various drug smugglers, often kidnapping and holding people for ransom. In 1976, Escobar founded the Medellín Cartel, which distributed powder cocaine, and established the first smuggling routes from Peru, Bolivia, and Ecuador, through Colombia and eventually into the United States. Escobar's infiltration into the U.S. created exponential demand for cocaine, and by the 1980s it was estimated Escobar led monthly shipments of 70 to 80 tons of cocaine into the country from Colombia. As a result, he quickly became one of the richest people in the world, but constantly battled rival cartels domestically and abroad, leading to massacres and the murders of police officers, judges, locals, and prominent politicians. In the 1982 Colombian parliamentary election, Escobar was elected as an alternate member of the Chamber of Representatives as part of the Liberal Party. Through this, he was responsible for community projects such as the construction of houses and football fields, which gained him popularity among the locals of the towns that he frequented. However, Escobar's political ambitions were thwarted by the Colombian and U.S. governments, who routinely pushed for his arrest, with Escobar widely believed to have orchestrated the Avianca Flight 203 and DOS building bombings in retaliation. In 1991, Escobar surrendered to authorities, and was sentenced to 5 years imprisonment on a host of charges, but struck a deal of no extradition with Colombian President Cesar Gaviria, with the ability of being housed in his own, self-built prison, La Catedral. In 1992, Escobar escaped and went into hiding when authorities attempted to move him to a more standard holding facility, leading to a nationwide manhunt. As a result, the Medellín Cartel crumbled, and in 1993, Escobar was killed in his hometown by Colombian National Police, a day after his 44th birthday. Escobar's legacy remains controversial. While many denounce the heinous nature of his crimes, he was seen as a Robin Hood-like figure for many in Colombia, as he provided many amenities to the poor. His killing was mourned and his funeral attended by over 25,000 people. Additionally, his private estate, Hacienda Nápoles, has been transformed into a theme park. His life has also served as inspiration for or has been dramatized widely in film, television, and in music. Early life. The city of Medellín, where Escobar grew up and began his criminal career. Pablo Emilio Escobar Gaviria was born on December 1, 1949 in Rionegro, Antioquia Department. He was the third of 7 children and grew up in poverty, in the neighboring city of Medellín. His father was a small farmer and his mother was a teacher. Escobar left high school in 1966 just before his 17th birthday, before returning 2 years later with his cousin Gustavo Gaviria. At this time, the hard life on the streets of Medellín had polished them into gangster bullies in the eyes of teachers. The two dropped out of school after more than a year, but Escobar did not give up. Having forged a high school diploma, he studied briefly in college with the goal of becoming a criminal lawyer, a politician, and eventually the president, but had to give up because of lack of money. Criminal career. See also, illegal drug trade in Colombia, illegal drug trade in Panama, and illegal drug trade in the Bahamas. Early. Escobar started his criminal career with his gang by stealing tombstones, sandblasting their inscriptions, and reselling them. After dropping out of school, Escobar began to join gangs to steal cars. 13 Escobar soon became involved in violent crime, employing criminals to kidnap people who owed him money and demand ransoms, sometimes tearing up ransom notes even when Escobar had received the ransom. His most famous kidnapping victim was businessman Diego Echeverria, who was kidnapped and eventually killed in the summer of 1971. Escobar received a $50,000 ransom from the Echeverria family. His gang became well known for this kidnapping. 14. Medellín Cartel. International drug routes. Escobar had been involved in organized crime for a decade when the cocaine trade began to spread in Colombia in the mid-1970s. Escobar's meteoric rise caught the attention of the Colombian Security Service, DAS, who arrested him in May 1976 on his return from drug trafficking in Ecuador. DAS agents found 39 kilograms of cocaine in the spare tire of Escobar's car. Escobar managed to change the first judge in the lawsuit and bribed the second judge, so he was released along with other prisoners. The following year, the agent who arrested Escobar was assassinated. Escobar continued to bribe and intimidate Colombian law enforcement agencies, in the same fashion. His carrot-and-stick strategy of bribing public officials and political candidates in Colombia, in addition to sending hitmen to murder the ones who rejected his bribes, came to be known as silver or lead, meaning money or death. The Medellín Cartel and the Cali Cartel both managed to bribe Colombian politicians, and campaigned for both the conservative and liberal parties. 1718. Hence, Escobar and many other Colombian drug lords were pulling strings in every level of the Colombian government, because many of the political candidates whom they backed financially were eventually elected. Although the Medellín Cartel was only established in the early 1970s, it expanded after Escobar met several drug lords on a farm in April 1978, and by the end of 1978 they had transported some 19,000 kilograms of cocaine to the United States. Rise to prominence. Powder cocaine was manufactured, packaged, and sold by Pablo Escobar and his associates, and eventually distributed to the U.S. drug market. Soon, the demand for cocaine greatly increased in the United States, which led to Escobar organizing more smuggling shipments, routes, and distribution networks in South Florida, California, Puerto Rico, and other parts of the country. He and cartel co-founder Carlos Leder worked together to develop a new transshipment point in the Bahamas, an island called Norman's Cay, about 350 kilometers, 220 miles, southeast of the Florida coast. Escobar and Robert Vesco purchased most of the land on the island, which included a 1 kilometer, 3,300 feet, airstrip, a harbor, a hotel, houses, boats, and aircraft, and they built a refrigerated warehouse to store the cocaine. According to his brother, Escobar did not purchase Norman's Cay, it was instead a sole venture of Leder's. From 1978 to 1982, this was used as a central smuggling route for the Medellín Cartel. With the enormous profits generated by this route, Escobar was soon able to purchase 20 square kilometers, 7.7 square miles, of land in Antioquia for several $1 million, on which he built the Hacienda Nápoles. The luxury house he created contained a zoo, a lake, a sculpture garden, a private bull ring, and other amenities for his family and the cartel. Escobar at the height of his power. See also, Avianca Flight 203 and DOS building bombing. Escobar was also involved in philanthropy in Colombia and paid handsomely for the staff of his cocaine lab. Escobar spent millions developing some of Medellín's poorest neighborhoods. He built housing complexes, parks, football stadiums, hospitals, schools, and churches. 2122 Escobar also entered politics in the 1980s and participated in and supported the formation of the Liberal Party of Colombia. In 1982, he successfully entered the Colombian Congress. Although only an alternate, he was automatically granted parliamentary immunity and the right to a diplomatic passport under Colombian law. At the same time, Escobar was gradually becoming a public figure, and because of his charitable work, he was known as Robin Hood Paisa. He alleged once in an interview that his fortune came from a bicycle rental company he founded when he was 16 years old. The Justice Minister Rodrigo Lara, Center, and presidential candidate Luis Carlos Galán, Left, were both assassinated by orders of Escobar. In Congress, the new Minister of Justice, Rodrigo Larrabonia, had become Escobar's opponent, accusing Escobar of criminal activity from the very first day of Congress. Escobar's arrest in 1976 was investigated by Larrabonia's subordinates. A few months later, liberal leader Luis Carlos Galán expelled Escobar from the party. Although Escobar fought back, he announced his retirement from politics in January 1984. 3 months later, Larrabonia was murdered. The Colombian judiciary had been a target of Escobar throughout the mid-1980s. While bribing and murdering several judges, in the fall of 1985, the wanted Escobar requested the Colombian government to allow his conditional surrender without extradition to the United States. The proposal was initially answered in the negative, and Escobar subsequently founded and implicitly supported the Los Extraditable Organization, which aims to fight extradition policy. The Los Extraditable Organization was subsequently accused of participating in an effort to prevent the Colombian Supreme Court from studying the constitutionality of Colombia's extradition treaty with the United States. In support of the November 6, 1985, far-left guerrilla movement that attacked the Colombian judiciary building and killed half of the justices of the Supreme Court. In late 1986, Colombia's Supreme Court declared the previous extradition treaty illegal due to being signed by a presidential delegation, not the president. Escobar's victory over the judiciary was short-lived, with new President Virgilio Barco Vargas having quickly renewed his agreement with the United States. Escobar still held a grudge against Luis Carlos Galán for kicking him out of politics, so Galán was assassinated on August 18, 1989 at Escobar's orders. Escobar then planted a bomb on Avianca Flight 203 in an attempt to assassinate Galán's successor, César Gaviria Trujillo, who missed the plane and survived. All 107 people were killed in the blast. Because 2 Americans were also killed in the bombing, the U.S. government began to intervene directly. La Catedral Prison. Main article, La Catedral. After the assassination of Luis Carlos Galán, the administration of César Gaviria moved against Escobar and the drug cartels. Eventually, the government negotiated with Escobar and convinced him to surrender and cease all criminal activity in exchange for a reduced sentence and preferential treatment during his captivity. Declaring an end to a series of previous violent acts meant to pressure authorities and public opinion, Escobar surrendered to Colombian authorities in 1991. Before he gave himself up, the extradition of Colombian citizens to the United States had been prohibited by the newly approved Colombian Constitution of 1991. This act was controversial, as it was suspected that Escobar and other drug lords had influenced members of the Constituent Assembly in passing the law. Escobar was confined in what became his own luxurious private prison, La Catedral, which featured a football pitch, a giant dollhouse, a bar, a jacuzzi, and a waterfall. Accounts of Escobar's continued criminal activities while in prison began to surface in the media, which prompted the government to attempt to move him to a more conventional jail on July 22, 1992. Escobar's influence allowed him to discover the plan in advance and make a successful escape, spending the remainder of his life evading the police. Death. Main articles, Los Peeps and Search Block. Members of Search Block celebrate over Escobar's body on December 2, 1993. His death ended a 16-month search effort. The tomb of Pablo Escobar and family in the Monte Sacro Cemetery, Itagüí. Escobar faced threats from the Colombian police, the U.S. government and his rival, the Cali cartel. On December 2, 1993, Escobar was found in a house in a middle-class residential area of Medellín by Colombian special forces using technology provided by the United States. Police tried to arrest Escobar, but the situation quickly escalated to an exchange of gunfire. Escobar was shot and killed while trying to escape from the roof. He was hit by bullets in the torso and feet, and a bullet which struck him in the head, killing him. This sparked debate about whether he killed himself or whether he was shot and killed. Aftermath of his death. Soon after Escobar's death and the subsequent fragmentation of the Medellín cartel, the cocaine market became dominated by the rival Cali cartel until the mid-1990s, when its leaders were either killed or captured by the Colombian government. The Robin Hood image that Escobar had cultivated maintained a lasting influence in Medellín. Many there, especially many of the city's poor whom Escobar had aided while he was alive, mourned his death, and over 25,000 people attended his funeral. Some of them consider him a saint and pray to him for receiving divine help. Escobar was buried at the Monte Sacro Cemetery 31. Virginia Vallejo's testimony. See also, Virginia Vallejo, Alberto Santofimio, Alfonso López Michelson, Ernesto Samper, and Álvaro Uribe. On July 4, 2006, Virginia Vallejo, a television anchorwoman romantically involved with Escobar from 1983 to 1987, offered Attorney General Mario Iguarán her testimony in the trial against former Senator Alberto Santofimio, who was accused of conspiracy in the 1989 assassination of presidential candidate Luis Carlos Galán. Iguarán acknowledged that, although Vallejo had contacted his office on July 4, the judge had decided to close the trial on July 9, several weeks before the prospective closing date. The action was seen as too late. 32-33. On July 18, 2006, Vallejo was taken to the United States on a special flight of the Drug Enforcement Administration, DEA, for safety and security reasons due to her cooperation in high-profile criminal cases. 34-35. On July 24, a video in which Vallejo had accused Santofimio of instigating Escobar to eliminate presidential candidate Galán was aired by RCN Television of Colombia. The video was seen by 14 million people, and was instrumental for the reopened case of Galán's assassination. On August 31, 2011, Santofimio was sentenced to 24 years in prison for his role in the crime. 36-37. Role in the Palace of Justice siege. Escobar funded the M19 communist guerrilla for the assault of the Colombian Palace of Justice. Among Escobar's biographers, only Vallejo has given a detailed explanation of his role in the 1985 Palace of Justice siege. The journalist stated that Escobar had financed the operation, which was committed by M19, but she blamed the army for the killings of more than 100 people, including 11 Supreme Court magistrates, M19 members, and employees of the cafeteria. Her statements prompted the reopening of the case in 2008. Vallejo was asked to testify, and many of the events she had described in her book and testimonial were confirmed by Colombia's Commission of Truth. 38-39. These events led to further investigation into the siege that resulted with the conviction of a high-ranking former colonel and a former general, later sentenced to 30 and 35 years in prison, respectively, for the forced disappearance of the detained after the siege. 40-41. Vallejo would subsequently testify in Galán's assassination. 42. In her book, Amando a Pablo, Odiando a Escobar, Loving Pablo, Hating Escobar, she had accused several politicians, including Colombian presidents Alfonso López Michelson, Ernesto Samper, and Álvaro Uribe, of having links to drug cartels. 43. Relatives. Escobar's widow, Maria Henao, now Maria Isabel Santos Caballero, son, Juan Pablo, now Sebastián Mariquin Santos, and daughter, Manuela, fled Colombia in 1995 after failing to find a country that would grant them asylum. 44. Despite Escobar's numerous and continual infidelities, Maria remained supportive of her husband. Members of the Cali cartel even replayed their recordings of her conversations with Pablo for their wives to demonstrate how a woman should behave. 45. This attitude proved to be the reason the cartel did not kill her and her children after Pablo's death, although the group demanded, and received, millions of dollars in reparations for Escobar's war against them. Henao even successfully negotiated for her son's life by personally guaranteeing he would not seek revenge against the cartel or participate in the drug trade. 46. Sebastián Mariquin, born as Juan Pablo Escobar, is an outspoken critic of the violent deeds of his father. After escaping first to Mozambique, then to Brazil, the family settled in Argentina. 47. Living under her assumed name, Henao became a successful real estate entrepreneur until one of her business associates discovered her true identity, and Henao absconded with her earnings. Local media were alerted, and after being exposed as Escobar's widow, Henao was imprisoned for 18 months while her finances were investigated. Ultimately, authorities were unable to link her funds to illegal activity, and she was released 48. According to her son, Henao fell in love with Escobar because of his naughty smile and the way he looked at her. He was affectionate and sweet. A great lover. I fell in love with his desire to help people and his compassion for their hardship. We would drive to places where he dreamed of building schools for the poor. From the beginning, he was always a gentleman. 49. Maria Victoria Henao de Escobar, with her new identity as Maria Isabel Santos Caballero, continues to live in Buenos Aires with her son and daughter. 50. On June 5, 2018, the Argentine federal judge Nestor Barril accused her and her son, Sebastián Mariquin Santos, of money laundering with two Colombian drug traffickers. 51, 52, 53. The judge ordered the seizing of assets for about $1 million each. 54. Argentinian filmmaker Nicolas Entel's documentary Sins of My Father, 2009, chronicles Mariquin's efforts to seek forgiveness, on behalf of his father, from the sons of Rodrigo Lara, Colombia's justice minister who was assassinated in 1984, as well as from the sons of Luis Carlos Galán, the presidential candidate who was assassinated in 1989. The film was shown at the 2010 Sundance Film Festival and premiered in the US on HBO in October 2010. 55. In 2014, Mariquin published Pablo Escobar, My Father under his birth name. The book provides a first-hand insight into details of his father's life and describes the fundamentally disintegrating effect of his death upon the family. Mariquin aimed to publish the book in hopes to resolve any inaccuracies regarding his father's excursions during the 1990s. 56. Escobar's sister, Luz Maria Escobar, also made multiple gestures in attempts to make amends for the drug baron's crimes. These include making public statements in the press, leaving letters on the graves of his victims, and, on the 20th anniversary of his death, organizing a public memorial for his victims. 57. Escobar's body was exhumed on October 28, 2006 at the request of some of his relatives in order to take a DNA sample to confirm the alleged paternity of an illegitimate child and remove all doubt about the identity of the body that had been buried next to his parents for 12 years. 58. A video of the exhumation was broadcast by RCN, angering Mariquin, who accused his uncle, Roberto Escobar, and cousin, Nicolas Escobar, of being merchants of death by allowing the video to air. 59. Hacienda Nápoles. After Escobar's death, the ranch, zoo, and citadel at Hacienda Nápoles were given by the government to low-income families under a law called Extinción de Dominio, domain extinction. The property has been converted into a theme park surrounded by 4 luxury hotels overlooking the zoo. 60. Escobar Inc. In 2014, Roberto Escobar founded Escobar Inc. with Olaf K. Gustafsson and registered successor in interest rights for his brother Pablo Escobar in California, United States. 61. Hippos. Main article, Pablo Escobar's hippos. Escobar kept 4 hippos in a private menagerie at Hacienda Nápoles. They were deemed too difficult to seize and move after Escobar's death, and hence left on the untended estate. By 2007, the animals had multiplied to 16 and had taken to roaming the area for food in the nearby Magdalena River. 62-63. In 2009, 2 adults and 1 calf escaped the herd and, after attacking humans and killing cattle, one of the adults, called Pepet, was killed by hunters under authorization of the local authorities. 63. As of early 2014, 40 hippos have been reported to exist in Puerto Triunfo, Antioquia Department, from the original 4 belonging to Escobar. 64. Without management, the population size is likely to more than double in the next decade. 65. The National Geographic Channel produced a documentary about them titled Cocaine Hippos. 66. A report published in a Yale student magazine noted that local environmentalists are campaigning to protect the animals, although there is no clear plan for what will happen to them. 67. In 2018, National Geographic published another article on the hippos which found disagreement among environmentalists on whether they were having a positive or negative impact, but that conservationists and locals particularly those in the tourism industry, were mostly in support of their continued presence. 68. By October 2021, the Colombian government had started a program of chemically sterilizing the animals. 69. Apartment demolition. On February 22, 2019, at 11:53 a.m. local time, Medellín authorities demolished the 6-story Edificio Monaco apartment complex in the El Poblado neighborhood where, according to retired Colombian General Rosso José Serrano, Escobar planned some of his most brazen attacks. The building was initially built for Escobar's wife but was gutted by a Cali cartel car bomb in 1988 and had remained unoccupied ever since, becoming an attraction to foreign tourists seeking out Escobar's physical legacy. Mayor Federico Gutiérrez had been pushing to raise the building and erect in its place a park honoring the thousands of cartel victims, including 4 presidential candidates and some 500 police officers. Colombian President Iván Duque said the demolition means that history is not going to be written in terms of the perpetrators, but by recognizing the victims, hoping the demolition would showcase that the city had evolved significantly and had more to offer than the legacy left by the cartels. 70. Personal life. Family and relationships. In March 1976, the 26-year-old Escobar married Maria Victoria Henao, who was 15. The relationship was discouraged by the Henao family, who considered Escobar socially inferior. The pair eloped. 71. They had 2 children, Juan Pablo, now Sebastian Mariquin, and Manuela. In 2007, the journalist Virginia Vallejo published her memoir Amando a Pablo, Odiando a Escobar, Loving Pablo, Hating Escobar, in which she describes her romantic relationship with Escobar and the links of her lover with several presidents, Caribbean dictators, and high-profile politicians. 72. Her book inspired the movie Loving Pablo, 2017. 73. A drug distributor, Griselda Blanco, is also reported to have conducted a clandestine, but passionate, relationship with Escobar. Several items in her diary link him with the nicknames Coke de mi Rey, My Coke King, and Paula Blanca, White Cock. 74. Properties. After becoming wealthy, Escobar created or bought numerous residences and safe houses, with the Hacienda Napoles gaining significant notoriety. The luxury house contained a colonial house, a sculpture park, and a complete zoo with animals from various continents, including elephants, exotic birds, giraffes, and hippopotamuses. Escobar had also planned to construct a Greek-style citadel near it, and though construction of the citadel was started, it was never finished. 60. Escobar also owned a home in the U.S. under his own name, a 6,500 square foot, 604 square meters, pink, waterfront mansion situated at 5860 North Bay Road in Miami Beach, Florida. The 4-bedroom estate, built in 1948 on Biscayne Bay, was seized by the U.S. federal government in the 1980s. Later, the dilapidated property was owned by Christian de Bourdoir, proprietor of the Chicken Kitchen fast food chain, who had bought it in 2014. De Bourdoir would later hire a documentary film crew and professional treasure hunters to search the edifice before and after demolition, for anything related to Escobar or his cartel. They would find unusual holes in floors and walls, as well as a safe that was stolen from its hole in the marble flooring before it could be properly examined. 75. Escobar also owned a huge Caribbean getaway on Isla Grande, the largest of the cluster of the 27 coral cluster islands comprising Islas del Rosario, located about 35 kilometers, 22 miles, from Cartagena. The compound, now half demolished and overtaken by vegetation and wild animals, featured a mansion, apartments, courtyards, a large swimming pool, a helicopter landing pad, reinforced windows, tiled floors, and a large but unfinished building to the side of the mansion. If you like this video, please like, comment about your thoughts on this, subscribe and click the bell icon for further notifications.